What is up, RotoBallers? Welcome back to our YouTube channel. I am Pierre Camus, also known as the Roto Chef. I'm here to talk about some wide receivers that you should consider either putting in or taking out of your lineup. Sometimes we have those tough decisions to make. It is week one, and so getting that W is always important. Get off to a right start. And let's look at the matchups. Of course, we don't know how the season is going to shake out. A lot of the stats we're pulling from last year. A lot of personnel changes, especially on defense. Okay, and we do cover a lot of these matchups, talk about wide receiver and cornerback individual matchups. Look for that article written by Mike Riggle and also DFS version by Andrew Lalama. A lot of great research information in those articles right here on rotoballer.com. But let me tell you some of my must starts and must sits. These are guys, besides the obvious, right? Those studs that you drafted early. Sometimes you have those guys in that flex conversation, that wide receiver 3 discussion, that you're not quite sure whether they should be in your lineup. So let me give you my favorites. Starting with a must start in Tyler Boyd. A lot of people consider him the wide receiver 3 in Cincinnati, and that's just not true because, look, Jamar Chase, I said this before all the noise about him dropping the ball and not recognizing the football and whatever you're hearing about these days. Jamar Chase took an entire year off of football. It was going to take him time to get used to the NFL, and we can't just assume that he and Joe Burrow on the same field is going to create magic, okay? It takes time for rookies to acclimate to the league, even if they're drafted in the top 10. So Jamar Chase, obviously struggling this preseason, going to take him some time. Tyler Boyd is established already. He was actually one of Joe Burrow's favorite targets last year in those games that Burrow played before his season-ending injury. Tyler Boyd was averaging almost 7 receptions and 70 yards per game. Doesn't sound like huge numbers, right? That alone isn't going to win you a week. But if you're talking about per game average, again, that's actually pretty good. That's getting him talking about near the top 25 overall wide receivers, and that is consistent production. So in a full PPR league, you like that. You like a guy who's getting targeted a lot, and Boyd will. The matchup with Minnesota is excellent because, well, Minnesota, their defense, was bad last year. They really didn't do a whole lot to address the secondary this year. I'm not really impressed by the pieces they have. I think Boyd gets plenty of targets. So unless the Vikings happen to just roll over the Bengals and it's a Dalvin Cook day and the Bengals don't, have enough firepower to fight back, I don't think it's going to happen, right? I do expect the Vikings to win, but I think the Bengals will be passing plenty. I think Boyd gets a lot of targets. I love T. Higgins in this game, but you should be starting him anyways. But I think Tyler Boyd is a guy that you absolutely must start, especially in full PPR leagues. I don't think you should start Kenny Golladay. Just got word that he is going to play. He's not on the injury report, so that's good news. But the bad news is he's barely played throughout the preseason. He's been limited with injuries, just like all of last season, limited by injuries. Not a lot of time to develop chemistry with Daniel Jones. This is a team that not exactly known for its passing offense anyways. And just to be honest here, the fact that Jason Garrett is still calling the shots does make me a little bit worried too about all those receivers. Saquon Barkley is playing, so he's going to be the focal point in that offense. So Kenny Golladay, you hate to sit him because he's a guy we know has been a fantasy stud, and you probably drafted him early enough that he is either your second or third wide receiver, hopefully your third. But you know what? I want to see how he does in this offense. If he really is 100% good to go, I doubt it. So this is also a very tough matchup. Denver's going to have one of the best defenses in the league, I predict, this year, and they got some help in the secondary with Kyle Fuller. So it's just going to be a long day, I think, for Golladay. I'm avoiding him. Not that I have him on any of my teams, but if I did, I would sit and wait and watch. All right, DJ Moore, guy really should be starting. There shouldn't be a question, but I've seen a lot of DJ Moore doubters and haters this offseason. I don't know why. These guys put up almost 1,200 yards back-to-back seasons with not superstars at quarterback, let's just face it. So Sam Darnold, whether you think he's an upgrade or a downgrade from Teddy Bridgewater, doesn't really matter because he can be productive no matter who is at quarterback. DJ Moore, I'm talking about the Jets, of course, we know it's going to be a building process this whole year. That defense, really not much better. There's nobody in the secondary that can stop DJ Moore. They've got a bunch of 5th round, 6th round picks, undrafted free agents back there. So DJ Moore is someone you should definitely fire up with confidence. Robbie Anderson is also startable, but honestly, I like Moore better than Anderson, even though a lot of hype about the Anderson-Darnold connection from their time in New York. Don't think there's some big revenge factor you need to worry about. They're just happy not to be Jets anymore. Okay, but DJ Moore is the guy still as far as the receiving core in that offense in Carolina. Odell Beckham, we just heard that he is clear. He's going to play in week 1, but I'm not going to play him because there's still a lot of risk here. This is a guy also has been hampered by injuries, well, throughout a lot of his career, to be honest. Let's remember that even though he did have a good couple of games right before last year's season-ending injury, there have been chemistry issues with Baker Mayfield. Have those been ironed out? Not quite sure if that's the case. And this is not a favorable matchup, though. You think the game script might favor Cleveland passing a lot if they're going against Kansas City, right? Having to pass and the volume and then maybe the target share being there. That could be true, but Kansas City also does have a really good secondary. So I'm not convinced that Beckham is just going to be super productive. I'm taking a wait and see approach. I think there's still some upside here. If you need kind of that home run play, he is a guy obviously who can make that big play happen, but there's just a lot of risk involved here. I prefer to sit him. And then Deebo Samuel is somebody who, again, injuries are, a problem that were recurring all of last season, multiple injuries. He was effective in a couple of games, but not so much all the time, very inconsistent. So what do we expect from him here? Well, he's healthier than Brandon Ayuk right now. Ayuk has been bothered by a hamstring. He is going to play, but again, might not be 100%. This is the matchup, though, that you want Deebo because going against the Lions, well, the Niners really aren't going to have to take a lot of shots deep. They're not going to have to stretch the field. They're going to keep things close to the vest. They're going to run the ball a lot. Deebo is basically a glorified running back. He catches the ball at or behind the line of scrimmage most of the time, and then he will do his magic after the catch. And this is a game where, again, I do think that you'll see a lot of Deebo involved, more so than Ayuk. And, of course, there's plenty of opportunities to exploit that Detroit defense. So I like Deebo on this matchup. I'm firing up everywhere that I have him. I'm not firing up Mooney. Look, I have a lot of Darnell Mooney this season. The exposure is great. But even though I do think he's a growing star at receiver, this is not the time to test that theory out because going against the Rams, who were the stingiest pass defense in the NFL last year. Okay, so Jalen Ramsey most likely going to shadow Allen Robinson. That might make, Mooney a little bit happy because he'll have more room to explore. But it doesn't matter because they have plenty of guys who can cover Mooney as well. It's not as if, he's going to have a field day. This whole defense will pressure Andy Dalton. That's right. Justin Fields not taking the field yet. It's still Andy Dalton at quarterback. Look, Dalton is not a bad quarterback. I'm not saying he can't make his receivers productive, but it's not going to happen against the Rams. This is not the time, to take a chance here with a guy like Mooney. You could probably find a higher upside option in this particular week, though I do like Mooney for the rest of the season. All right, so those are some of my must-starts and sits for week 1. Plenty more guys that we could talk about, but for that, I encourage you to read all of the fine material we have here on RotoBaller.com. So check it out. A lot of work put in, especially by our rankers. We update these rankings up until game time Sunday morning. So check it out. All right, good luck in week 1.